What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another episode here of Just Jets, episode 254, the last episode of the 2024 year. It's been probably my least favorite Jets year. This has probably been by far my least favorite Jets year. Just this team with the expectations they had going into the year and where they are likely to finish at 4-13, or at best case scenario, win-wise, 5-12 is just an absolute abomination. It's almost unfathomable that it got to this point, and I've really grown to dislike this team. There's players on this team that I like. It's not so much like I hate every single player on this roster. That's not the case. But I hate what this team represents, which is just an absolute abomination of a failure of a season. And for me, just going back in time over some other least favorite years that I've seen, 2016 has to be up there after a promising 2015 year. Ryan Fitzpatrick has a horrible season, goes completely off the rails, locker room in shambles, a 5-11 season. I personally was not a really big fan of the 2014 Jets team. I just found them very boring. They were a 4-win team. They ended up winning a couple games at the end of the year, so it made them look a little bit better than what they actually were. That was the year that Geno forgot the time difference against the Chargers. And then you had like Chris Johnson and Eric Decker on that team. So it was a weird mix of veterans and young guys. And I don't remember that season very fondly. It was Rex's last year. Obviously, the Gase years back-to-back were pretty horrible. And that's, again, just off the top of my head. But I think 2024 is the one that's going to take the cake, which is ironic because of my personal life. I think 2024 was one of my favorite years in the personal life, just not in watching this freaking football team, which is just like polar opposites. And I'm excited for 2025. A lot of big things happening for me personally. Going to be married in 2025, turn 30 in 2025. So a lot of change for me, which is good and I'm excited about, and hopefully a lot of change for the New York Jets, which is basically the spot where I wanted to transition to, because the Jets need some massive change with just how out of touch and the lack of self-awareness that the head coach, Jeff Ulbrich, and just the New York Jets in general completely have. I almost feel like it's a waste of time to talk about how bad Jeff Ulbrich is, because it's obvious, right? It's like waking up and doing a video that the sky is blue, or that the sun rose from the east and is setting in the west again today. But there were 3 quotes this week from after the game against the Buffalo Bills, where they lost 40-14 on the road. It was 40-0 late in this game. And there were 3 quotes that I think are maybe the perfect summation of just how out of touch Jeff Ulbrich and the Jets, not just the head coach, it's encompassing the entire organization, truly is. And the first one we'll start is with Haason Reddick, who, speaking of failures, has been an absolute bust of a trade. What an absolute abject failure that was, trading for Haason Reddick. And the production or lack thereof that he's given you has been unreal after the holdout and how much he tried to bend the Jets over the barrel. Here's the quote from Jeff Ulbrich, though. Ready for this line? Haason is one of the most unselfish players I've ever been around. Look, guys, I get it. A coach is never going to go out and be like, Haason Reddick is a selfish guy. I hate his guts. No one is realistically asking Jeff Ulbrich to come out there and say that. That's unfair, unrealistic expectations. But you can't give me he's one of the most unselfish players I've ever been around when he has the holdout into the season, comes in, and it's been horrible. He has been a horrible New York Jet. It's not like he came in, played 10 games, gave you 6 sacks, and you're like, okay, it would have been nice to have him over a full season, but you pace it out. He would have been right around the 10 sack guy, whatever. That's not even the case. That's not what we're talking about here. He has like half a sack on the season. He's a non-factor week after week after week after week. It's been horrible. I cannot believe just how bad it's been. And for the head coach to be like, yeah, it's on Reddick, unselfish guy. Completely unselfish guy. The second one that I have for you, I think is by far the worst one that I've heard from him. And it is the perfect microcosm for the Jets season. When asked about Aaron Rodgers' play, here was the quote from Jeff Ulbrich after the game. I've got to look at the tape. Honestly, I didn't get to see a whole lot of the offense. I was doing a lot of defensive adjustments, especially in the first half. This is a head coach. Your job is to be the head coach of the football team. You can't ignore the entire side of the ball, of one side of the ball. I get it. He's a defensive mind. And he still wanted to call plays. And that has clearly been an issue because the defense has stunk. And he is not paying attention to half the game with the offensive side of the ball. That's unacceptable. That's the difference. So when you look at like coaching candidates, for instance, Mike Vrabel also comes from the defensive side of the ball. But Mike Vrabel is not going to be, looking to be like, I got to look at the tape. I wasn't watching. I was, scheming up the defense here. It's the same thing that Adam Gase used to do. Same thing in 2019 and 2020. When the defense was on the field, he was sitting on the bench by himself, drawing up plays. That's not acceptable. And that's an example of someone doing it from the defensive side and someone doing it from the offensive side. If you're going to be a head coach at this level, you need to be able to take over the full team and be in charge of everyone, not just whatever side of the ball you come from. And that was my problem with Robert Saleh this year too. While Saleh thankfully didn't call plays, but it's been clear that his influence on the defense has been there. He got too much of a pass for when the offense struggled. To be like, oh, he's a defensive coach. He's not a defensive coach. He's a head football coach. If he's the defensive coordinator, it would be completely reasonable. You get all the tweets from, the aggregators or, the gambling accounts that, do these like bait posts where it's, the Jets defensive numbers when with Robert Saleh and without Robert Saleh. Maybe the Jets made a mistake. He's the head coach. He's not the defensive coordinator. That would be a great argument if Robert Saleh was your defensive coordinator and they fired him after 5 games and the defense went down the tubes. Then you can go, okay, yeah, mistake. But this is a head coach we're talking about. You have to be able to know what is going on with your team. And I don't want to hear after your quarterback had one of the genuinely worst performances in the NFL this season, second worst by EPA this year. One of the worst, his worst quarterback performance, Rodgers, since 2010. He was horrible in this game. Absolutely horrible. I don't want to hear, I got to watch the tape. Didn't get a good look, honestly. What are you doing? What do you mean? And last but certainly not least, maybe the player that personifies the 2024 Jets the most, Michael Clemens. Oh, Michael Clemens, how he's become Jets Twitter's whipping boy. He's been someone that Jets fans have been very, very frustrated with. But if you look back at comments that I've made on Michael Clemens over the years, I've gotten a lot of pushback saying I'm too hard on Michael Clemens. I have some bias against him. I don't feel that's the case. I genuinely try my damnedest to call it like I see it with any player on this team, positive or negative. And for me, with Clemens, it was a lot of negative early on in his career, and it has continued, and maybe a brighter light has been shined on him this year because of his playing time. A better example. Okay, so Quincy Williams. I thought I was hard on him his first 2 years with the Jets because I thought that he missed too many tackles and was playing a little bit too reckless. And he has reeled that in and been really freaking good the last 2 years. So you know what I've done? I've gone from being critical of him to praising him. And that's not hypocritical. That's just, again, calling it like I see it. But Michael Clemens has genuinely been, this year, one of the worst defensive players that I've seen start for this football team since I've been watching them since 2003. That's 20 plus years of watching Jets football. And for someone to play this much, Clemens has got to be towards the top of the list of starters on the defensive side of the ball that has gotten this far of a leash. Who's another one you can think of? Kyle Wilson? Maybe? Like from 2010, he was pretty bad, but I don't think he's as bad as Michael Clemens. There's been some bad ones, but this is towards the top. It has to be. The video, I can't stop watching the video of Michael Clemens jumping on top of the pile and getting an unnecessary roughness penalty like he's playing football at recess. That's something that I would have seen in 4th grade out there. Remember Kill the Carrier? When you're like, everyone's in a pile and then your buddy who's a little, his parents call him Husky, run in and jump on top of the pile and try to bring everyone down. That's what Michael Clemens did in a National Football League game. Jeff Ulbrich's quote on Michael Clemens this week: relentless mindset and one of the best straining effort players I have ever been around in my life as a coach or a player. In the moment he made a poor decision and all the strain and all the effort, all that stuff, we love it. He embodies everything we want to be as a team, but at the same time, having that self-control in those moments. The perfect line. Ironically, Jeff Ulbrich said the perfect line in this quote. I almost can't hate his quote because he says he embodies everything we want to be as a team. And I think Clemens and how he's played this year in 2024 is the perfect description for how out of touch and how poor this team is and how long of a leash they get and how it's everyone else's fault and not their own and how they're frauds. Sorry, that's harsh. It is. I'm not going to lie to you. That was very harsh to come off and say it like that. But that's how I feel watching this team. That's how I feel watching him. And I just cannot wait for this 2024 season to come to a close. It's 2025 now. By the time you're listening to this, the year is 2025. And I am very, very, very excited to put the 2024 New York Jets in the rearview mirror. One more week left against the Miami Dolphins. They had to push it 4:25 start, so we got to wait till the late afternoon for that one. But it will finally, mercifully come to a close, and we'll be able to talk about the GM, the head coach, and potentially who the quarterback is going to be for this team next year in just a few short weeks. And I'm ready for it to come to a close. So sorry for the harsh words, but I think it just needed to be said. Let's go to your voicemails. We got a few this week. We'll start with Vic out in Florida. Just kind of venting it out, man.
Matt, Vic from Florida. Hey, man, hope you guys had a Merry Christmas. Great holiday with the family. Well, another pathetic use of a game that was. And that might have been the most embarrassing loss I've ever seen. You had the Sam Darnold, you had the Buffalo, you have all this stuff, but this has been the most embarrassing season I think I've ever been a part of. I'll be 33 in January. I've been a fan just as long as you have, right? But this is tough, bro. One thing I wanted to mention that Jeff Ulbrich does well, he doesn't lie. If you notice, at the end of the second half, they come back in ready for the third quarter. He's getting interviewed. What does he say? What do we have to do, Coach? What do we have to do to turn this ship around? It's only a 12-point game. What can we do? Well, we're going to have to just, go out there and play our style of football. We're going to stick to our brand of football and just do us. Oh, boy, yeah, they did. They sure as heck did us the entire second half and was non-existent, non-competitive, embarrassing. Trade Sauce Gardner. Get whatever you can. He takes himself out of the game. Trade Garrett Wilson. I don't care what he does. It doesn't matter. Trade whoever. Trade them all. Get rid of Rodgers. I mean, the other week I call in, I'm saying Rodgers and Devontae look like they're having fun. Boy, was I wrong. I feel like idiot, man. Oh, I'm sorry for venting, but this is what we do, bro. This is what we do. Yeah, I mean, if I was Woody Johnson, but I'm not. I'm not Brick Johnson.
Thank God.
I don't care about how much money they have. I would never want to be part of that
Jinx.
family. Anyway, sell the team. Petition Goodell to get rid of the team, get rid of the entire franchise, rename the franchise, new uniforms, new name, new stadium, new everything. It's gotta be that way. There's no other way around it. Burn it all down. Happy New Year. Wait till next year.
Happy New Year to you as well. I cannot wait for the 2025 season either. Oh boy. All right. So I'm not on the trade Garrett or trade Sauce. And I know maybe that was just in the moment frustration from Vic. So I'm going to give you a pass on that. But I am very excited for the turnover that's going to come. I don't think Rodgers is going to be here. I don't think DJ Reed's going to be here. I don't think Javon Kinlaw, Hassan Reddick, Michael Clemens, Chuck Clark, maybe Tony Adams. And not all these guys are at fault, but I think this team does need some turnover. And they need to make some changes. There's some things to like about this team, and I think Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner are that. Two things that you could like about this team. I know Sauce had a really down year this year in comparison to where he normally is, but he's dealing with a hamstring. He came out of this game with a hamstring, and if you remember going back to week 1, he came out of that game with an injury too. So my theory is he's been playing hurt all year. I think he's too talented of a player for this just to be what he is now going forward. And I think he'd be selling low on a guy like Sauce. I get the frustration with him. I do. I really wish that he wouldn't have to comment on something on Instagram and then have to clarify the comment. I really just really want him to put the phone down and stay off social media. It's not helping anything. But I want to build around the Garrett Wilson. I want Breece Hall to be here. I want someone to utilize Breece Hall better. This is still, we're going into the last week of the year. There has not been a single game this year where Breece Hall has had 20 plus carries in a game. They only threw the ball to him once this past week. It's unreal just how poorly they use their guys. Let's go out to Peter in Hudson Valley.
Hey, man. It's Peter calling from the beautiful Hudson Valley on this now Monday evening after some news has come out today. You broke, and I think also Ian from Jet Central, that Mike Vrabel's contract with the Browns is over. Kind of weird that for some reason they didn't have him go all the way into January, the last week of the season. Maybe his contract really was just ending in 2024. But good news for us. And obviously teams who don't have a head coach, as you mentioned, being the Bears and the Saints as well. It's one of those things that if they get a chance to interview him, let's hope we don't have him leave the building. He stays right where he is. So, I mean, yes, I did want to comment on the fact that, the Jets lost to the Bills yesterday. What a terrible loss with all the turnovers and a lot of, bad play. One thing that I wanted to mention related to coaching from that game that I saw in the post press conference from Ulbrich was the fact that he said he was concentrating so much on his play calling as the defensive coordinator that he really wasn't paying attention to the offense at all. And I'm like, Robert Saleh 2.0.
Yep. Horrible quote.
I can't see him being a viable head coaching candidate now that he's had this 12-game audition when you make comments like that. And you got to take another hard look at the film and, figure out what's going on with things. I love Ulbrich, but he's going to be a defensive coordinator for quite a while. Just wanted to make sure to mention that. But here's my question, going back to Vrabel. If Jets wind up doing things backwards, and for some reason they're able to hire Vrabel even before he interviews with anyone else or even after, let's say, who do you think is the most ideal GM candidate to work with him? And I'm not talking about guys they've already interviewed, and we know some of those are, guys who obviously aren't working in the league. So let me know your thoughts on that. And any guy who's currently in the league as an assistant GM or head of football operations or whoever who can work with Vrabel as GM and build this team out the way it needs to be. That's my question for this week. And as always, go Jets.
Great question, Peter. And I'm glad you asked it today Because earlier on, I record this on Tuesday, but on Tuesday morning, I saw a tweet from Will Parkinson, friend of the show, love his work over on Turn On the Jets and over at Badlands. He mentioned someone that is a name to watch to be paired with Mike Vrabel. And it's not a name that's been brought up a ton. And that name is Ryan Cowden. And Mike Giardi, who Will does a show with, quoted it and said that the two likely would have been paired together if someone hired Vrabel last year. So if you don't know who Cowden is, totally fine. He was the VP of player personnel from 2018 to 2022 with Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. So he wasn't the GM with him. He was the VP of player personnel guy during their tenure together with the Tennessee Titans. Now, since the last 2 years, he's been an advisor with the Giants. I get it. Some people are going to go, oh, well, Giants weren't good, the last couple of years. And that's fair and completely valid. And it's a reasonable concern to have. But if you're looking at what they were able to do together in Tennessee and someone that he's comfortable working with, that's someone that I'd be more than okay with going that route if it meant getting Mike Vrabel in here. It's not, Vrabel and some GM who's been just like downright completely horrible. This is a guy who's a player personnel person on a team that was very good with Mike Vrabel. And they've worked together, and apparently they were supposed to be a pairing last year if someone was going to hire Vrabel. So I think that would be your answer. And if you're asking me if the follow-up is, well, would you be okay with that? Yes, I absolutely would. I think Vrabel is, I've said it before, he's my number one coach candidate, and I'd be fine with Cowden as the GM in that instance. Let's close out the show with PG from Long Island.
Hello, Matt O'Leary, PG from Long Island here. A couple of things. Thank you for taking my call as always.
Sure.
Glad to see that. Sounds like you're feeling better. Listen, I told you I wanted to root for the Jets all year, watch the games, hope they win. If they lose, okay, we end up with a better draft position. But I did not expect to see what I saw on Sunday. That was a complete disaster. To get blown out by a division rival. The highlights being
awful.
Rodgers yelling at his receiver for not catching the ball with his feet. Maybe it was Michael Clemens jumping on the pile like he's at a elementary schoolyard in sixth grade. I mean, total disaster. Jeff Ulbrich, he does not deserve to be coaching a middle school JV. Horrible. The entire team is in shambles. The organization is in shambles. Which brings us to my next point. Really, you had mentioned that we need to bring in a experienced head coach to turn this thing around. I couldn't agree with you more, especially now when you see the state of the Jets. But here's the thing. According to Brian Costello, Mike Vrabel, who's, Mike Vrabel, who's your top choice, my top choice probably as well. Supposedly he's going to Las Vegas. That's what the scuttlebutt evidently is throughout the league. There's a Tom Brady connection. He's a minority owner and going to have some say in who they hire. So I'd say what we do is bring him in, give him some Chucky money, kind of money that Gruden got when he went to Oakland back in the day, get him in the building, let him have some say in the GM. I know that's not the best way to go, but I think that's what we need to do in our situation because he's our best shot to turn the team around. There's not a lot of other good, experienced coaches out there. Rex Ryan, as you mentioned, love him, but no Ron Rivera, no Matt Nagy, no Arthur Smith, no. Maybe you know somebody out there other than, Vrabel who could actually do a good job. I don't think there's many out there. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And as always, Matt O'Leary, Happy New Year to you and your family. And
you as well.
Go Jets.
Yeah, I think in addition to Vrabel and Vegas, Vrabel and New England, if New England moves on from their head coach, Gerard Mayo, I could see him going back there. Supposedly, too, like, I know Ben Johnson's a name that gets tossed around a lot. I don't see him coming to the Jets, but there's also, like, really strong rumors that he's going to end up in Jacksonville. And supposedly he was interested in the Bears job last year, but I think my guess would be Ben Johnson ends up in Jacksonville. To give you some other names, aside from Vrabel, I like Todd Monken a lot. I don't know if he would come here after what happened in 2019 and just how they've been. I don't know if he comes here. Brian Flores, I like. I know defensive mind, but I thought he did a pretty good job in Miami. I know the Tua stuff didn't work out, but I think he's learned from that. And I think he was a little bit right about Tua, by the way. And I think the Jets need a hard-nosed guy. I don't really like the idea of a John Gruden, Ron Rivera, Rex Ryan type. If you're going to go first-time coach route, which is not my preference, I don't really want to go an Aaron Glenn route. And it's not because the defense has fallen off the last few weeks. And I think that's a little harsh on Glenn. The number of injuries that the defense has suffered is absolutely insane. And they played hard for a long time. So I'm not discrediting him as a candidate for how his team has played the last couple of weeks on that side of the ball. It's more so it just feels repetitive to what the Jets usually do. If they're going to go first-time head coach, I would rather it be an offensive guy like Liam Cohen or Joe Brady than someone on the defensive side of the ball. So I guess that would be my answer to you. And Todd Monken, Brian Flores, Liam Cohen, Joe Brady would be the guys that I would be looking at if Mike Vrabel is not an option for the New York Jets. Guys, that'll do it for me. Thank you so much for hanging with me all 2024. I hope you remain hanging out with me in 2025 and hopefully a much better season coming in 2025. That'll do it. I'm Matt. I'll catch you next time.